Hello, and welcome to What is Innovation, the podcast that explores the reality of a word that is in danger of losing its meaning altogether. This podcast is produced by Outlast Consulting, LLC, a boutique consultancy that helps companies use innovation principles to solve their toughest business problems. I'm your host, Jared Simmons, and I'm so excited to have Amanda Billiot. Amanda Billiot is the VP Human Resources for Military Engines at Pratt Whitney. After over 16 years in HR, she is a self-proclaimed positive disruptor when it comes to leading innovation and growth courageously. Two of her proudest professional accomplishments include helping to start the winning Empower Ability ERG and this incredible Will Rise program at Pratt. She has also worked for GE, Cooper Industries, the National Labor Relations Board, and in sports radio. Amanda is also a proud fellow of the Aspen Institute's First Mover program and an active member of her local community and church. Amanda has a bachelor's degree in international economics from the University of Alabama and a master's in human resources and industrial relations from LER at the University of Illinois. She is married to a former Army Ranger and is the proud mom of 2 daughters and 2 sons and an 18-month-old foster daughter whom she hopes to adopt this year. The entire family are outrageous Alabama football fans and lifelong Southerners who live on an old Christmas tree farm in New England with their dogs, some useless goats, and a bunch of chickens. Amanda, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. If the rest of the conversation is as fun as the bio, then we're in good shape.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Amanda and I go way back to college.
20 years.
Oh my goodness. I wasn't going to say the number because I haven't come to terms with it. 20 years.
20 years.
Yes. And I know it's an audio podcast, but the last time I saw Amanda was 20 years ago and she looks exactly the same. It's good to see you, and it's good to talk to you because your energy is infectious, and I'm excited to talk about innovation, and who knows what else will come up in the chat. We're gonna dive right in and start with the way we always start, as you know. What is innovation?
I love innovation because it can take on so many different flavors. It can mean something different to everyone. But no matter what, innovation has energy behind it. And so it's this manifestation of energy. And whether you're challenging or you're pushing or you're creating or you're recreating, all of this energy around innovation is an exciting thing to be a part of. So I love the idea of continuous improvement, but I think innovation is that, but it's always got more energy around it than the old standard lean, Six Sigma kind of approach to things. It's just more exciting when you call it innovation.
I couldn't agree more. And no surprise that energy is at the root of your definition of innovation. And one thing I'm curious about, you mentioned lean, Six Sigma, and other things, that continuous improvement, a lot of industry level work processes to make things better or more efficient, or what have you. What does that energy, when you infuse something with energy and it becomes innovation, how does it look different?
So one of the things that tends to happen when you have a culture of continuous improvement along the processes of lean or Six Sigma, sometimes you fall into a rut of doing process for the sake of process. And that's not energy. That's just lethargy. Better word. Yeah. You lack the passion behind it. And what I have to remind folks sometimes is that energy with innovation sometimes can feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. I would rather be comfortable with being uncomfortable than lethargic or languishing. I see patents, right? We have a ton of patents at Pratt Whitney. And a lot of times people think that patents are just associated with a particular part, widget, design, system, that type of thing, something. But you can also patent process. You can patent ways of doing things. So even the innovation around patents is multidimensional. And that's just one example. So if I think about innovation in any type of form or function across a business, it's not just in process, it's not just in engineering, it's not just in those hardcore sort of tangible functions, it's in anything and everything that we do. As long as it's done with energy, we can make it innovative.
I love that. I love that. I particularly like that it kind of turns everything on its ear a bit, because most of the time when people start talking about innovation, they start talking about work processes. They start talking about how things are done. They start talking about different approaches to how you accomplish things. And I think I really like your definition, because you kind of turn it around and say, you know what, if you start with energy and you start with enthusiasm and you start with a passion for something, whatever you apply that to is going to take on a more innovative perspective.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, my company did this really great training, and it was around managing inclusion.
Mm.
And a lot of times people sort of roll their eyes at anything that has a buzzword attached to it,
Yeah.
especially on topics such as inclusion and diversity and equity, et cetera. I think you go in there with this like preconceived notion about what you're about to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Doze off during. This training was phenomenal because it took a very, I'll use the word, innovative approach to inclusion by talking about creating go-to performers on your team. We all sort of have a bias or an inclination to go to people that we either know we can get the good stuff out of all the time, that will go above and beyond, but we have our favorites. Whatever the underlying cause of that bias or preference may be, we all have our favorites. It's something that everybody can confess to.
That's right.
I guess, non-guilty kind of way. But if you think about what it would take to create more go-to performers on your team, not only are you being more inclusive of all the parties that are involved, but you are energizing every person on your team, therefore exponentially increasing the productivity, the efficiency, the energy, whatever the case may be. And then you can really start busting down walls and breaking through ceilings, and then it becomes innovative. It was a great approach to inclusion because it wasn't about any type of category. It wasn't making somebody feel, self-reflective when it came to bias necessarily. It was more about this could make you and your entire team better.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an innovative approach to inclusion training.
Oh, I love that. It's a great example, and it highlights your definition of innovation. It also highlights your sort of viewpoint on how things should be. So I like that you kind of pointed out that a lot of DEI work or inclusion work specifically can begin from a sort of here's what you're doing wrong, here's the problem that you have that needs to be fixed point of view. And I like that this innovative approach that you're describing starts from, human nature and something that we all can acknowledge and agree with about ourselves and not feel any sort of inborn guilt or shame about. It's just about how to name that, expose it, and then leverage it to address this issue.
We have a great DEI program.
Mhm.
It's Raytheon. Our chief diversity officer is Marie Silla Dixon, and she's a force. She's phenomenal. I'm excited that that chief diversity officer position is a direct report into our CEO. I think last year, 2020, and some of the things that happened from a social injustice standpoint across the country sort of elevated the need for that. But at the same time, DEI has been a buzzword. It's been important. It's been a thing for years.
Mm-hmm.
All of the studies, you can't find a study out there that doesn't prove the increase in profit margin or the increase in business productivity, efficiency, inclusion, engagement, right? Like there's not a study out there that doesn't create the business case.
Right.
But we don't make any big strides, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where have we really done a 180 on DEI anywhere? And I would say globally, even with all of this data around how important it is for your business to not only establish themselves, as set aside from the rest, but to win.
Right.
Everybody likes to win. So if you think about it, everybody's like, I want to win. And we've put sort of the answer in front of you, which is DEI will help you win. And yet nobody's making these great strides. And then somebody gets innovative. And they think about coming at it from a different point of view. And lo and behold, it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it a one and done? Never, because DEI is not a finish line. It's an endless journey that we all get to travel down that road together. And I read that in a book somewhere, so I'm really not that articulate or poetic. And so we have to use that energy. We have to be innovative. We have to flip it if we ever really want to change the game, because the data to change has been there. The heart to change there has not.
Wow, well said. Well said. And I think using DEI as a sort of metaphor for broader innovation really brings it into focus when you think about the fact that by and large, this innovative approach notwithstanding, the same basic toolkit for diversity, equity, and inclusion has existed since the early 80s. And you cannot find a company, a 40-year-old company that was doing business in 1980 that does anything else the same way they did in 1980.
Right.
But they still have employee resource groups. They still establish mentoring programs. They still follow the same playbook, track the same metrics, and use the same data to build the case. And what shocks me about that is over those same 40 years, we have learned so much about psychology and human nature. And, the entire field of industrial organizational psychology has come into its own in that era. And books have been written, there are stars, there are, people who are famous for writing books about how people think.
Right.
But that thinking never got circled back around to being factored into how we approach diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And so to hear about these new approaches just gives me hope, frankly, that we're not going to be here 40 years from now having the same conversation about the same numbers in the same place, doing things the same way. So thank you for sharing that, because it's really energizing.
Well, I'm proud of the work that our company has done. And all of those things that you mentioned, particularly ERGs, I have such a heart for those. They're all great and they're all necessary, but those are done in groups or it's a checklist. But where's the heart work? And, I think a lot of times we try and separate business from personal. And we say things like, it's not personal, it's business. But it's not true. I don't care how many times you say that. Business is personal because it's made up of your employees or your customers. It's all people and we're all human. So again, where is the innovation? How do we flip it? And that's where the energy has to come in. That's where the, I'll use another word, passion has to come in. And a lot of times passion makes people feel uncomfortable. Get over it. Together, right? Okay, short story. I came out one Thanksgiving night, so that I could be at the front of the line at Target to get a TV that was on sale for Black Friday. Okay, I admit it. I stayed out in the cold. It was probably not my best decision. But when those doors opened, my friend looked at me and he linked arms with me and he goes, honey, you just hurdled the slip and falls. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. Because we always think about like linking arms so that we're stronger together, but we don't necessarily think about linking arms so that we're helping each other get through these hard times, right?
Yeah.
It's both and it's everything. And I don't know why I chose to share that story about camping out at Target, but let's just say I never forgot it and I've applied it so many more times. So, hey, you got to hurdle the slip and falls, but put together.
Hurdling the slip and falls together. That is
an awful story. Really,
it is
who I'm hurdling, but I feel bad.
It is a great story. It's a great story. And you know what it did? It gave those slip and falls purpose. So those people that were on the ground, they now have a purpose. They are helping people to, get a visual that can help them conceptualize innovation. And that's what the value they brought that day is.
That, and they got me a $299 big screen TV for my teenager's room.
That doesn't hurt either.
Nope.
I have a clear view now of what innovation is for you.
Yeah.
Tell me what innovation isn't. What isn't innovation?
So I thought about this question. And in some ways, I really hesitate to exclude anything. What is innovation? Look, I work for one of the three biggest engine manufacturers in the world. Pratt Whitney manufactures, designs and manufactures some of the finest jet engines in the world. The barriers to entry for this type and size of company are huge and staggering and impossible. But if you think about it, We've been around for almost 100 years, and we keep innovating on these engines. What was once water cooled was air cooled. Now we have the NGPF, or I guess I should not use an acronym, but the next generation propulsion engines. The GTF, the gear turbofan, is on over 1,000 planes right now.
Jeez.
And it's just come out in this last decade, and it takes decades sometimes to get these innovations, seen through the design phase and the testing phase and the manufacturing, to get them to a customer. And in this engine, right, it's the greenest engine on the planet. And I don't know that, 20 years ago, when it was a concept that we were trying to green the world, that we were trying to save the world from climate change.
Right.
We did. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal product. The other thing we look at from a military engines standpoint is we're the 5th generation. The F-135 Joint Strike Fighter is the 5th gen military engine, the only 5th generation engine that's out there. And it is a beast, and it's gorgeous, and it's beautiful, and it's fighting for our freedom and protecting our freedom on a daily basis. Now, commercial engines and military engines have nothing to do with one another, except they lift really big things that shouldn't be able to fly off the ground.
Yeah.
And I think about the iterations that it took to get us to where we are. Some people might not consider those really innovative, but some of the things that they do really are. But let's take it another step further. We talked about patents. We talked about a product versus a process. We talked about the way we think, the way we train, the way we work with others. Innovation can absolutely be anything. And even if it's going backwards, sometimes that's necessary. We have to retrace where we came from to understand where we need to go. So unless it's doing something negative or it's hurting someone, I kind of hesitate to say that there's anything that's not innovative. Maybe that's just a soft answer, but the minute we start putting limitations on how we can change the world, I guess is the minute I think we stop trying to change it.
Yes, all of that. Fully agree with all of that. I think the main thing I really appreciate about that thought process and that philosophy, I'll call it, is that idea of looking back to look forward. And, a 5th generation engine tells you that this engine has not only survived, but it's improved and it's adapted. And, when you're talking about the incremental steps, micro innovations, the tiny things that had to be figured out or updated, or, instead of using this material, use that material, like all those changes that kind of go into building up this broader innovation that you can look back over this decades period and say, oh, that is innovation. When you're standing up close to it and living it every day, and going through the minutia and the sort of mundane aspects of a broader innovation effort. I agree with you. Things that people might say, oh, that's not innovative, swapping out that bolt with that bolt, that's not innovation. But when it allows you to take X percent of weight out of this engine and do this other thing and create these other opportunities, it is part of a broader innovation ecosystem. And I think it's important that you highlight that the way you did, because it is very easy for people to look at the process and decide if something's innovative versus looking at the outcomes. And I think a lot of the innovation is in the outcomes in a lot of situations.
I think we can dissect that even further, if you'll allow me.
Please.
So one I want to talk about is talent and strengths and development. Let me hold off on that one for just a second, because that mundane, we all hit the mundane wall. Even if every day is different for us, at some point in time, we hit the mundane wall. That's where, even if you look at the way that the US military is training its soldiers now, they build in resiliency. Resiliency isn't just for PTSD. Resiliency is for mundane, right? It's for whole health and well-being. So when I think about that sluggish, that languishing kind of thing, you can look at it in multiple different ways. Like people always used to tell us, hit mini milestones, set mini milestones for yourself. Guess where you hear about it all the time? Weight loss. Every time you lose a few pounds, reward yourself, not with food, but reward yourself, right? It's mini milestones. It's determining little steps along the way that are worth celebrating, even if they're not huge. It's in the company cultures where they say, if you fail, let's celebrate. Because when you celebrate failure, you're celebrating learning. And it's a twist. It's an innovative approach to something that used to hold us back. When we have people that make a widget that maybe don't realize what that widget becomes a part of, it's taking, an assembly line worker to a military air show or just an air show in general and having them watch that airplane that their widget is a part of fly. Mm. So you tie things together when things get mundane from a different perspective, when things languish. And building those chances and opportunities for celebration and success, those are the milestones that we need in an innovative approach to whole health and well-being. Because let me tell you, COVID, changing our world and languishing in whatever the heck this chaos has been for the last 16 months. I mean, I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, okay, within about 10 days time, I went from going into an office every single day, working 50, 60 hours a week, managing, like juggling the home stuff with my husband, trying to be there for my kids, to working every single day from home, trying to figure out how to work remotely. What the hell is Zoom? And by the way, my dog's always going to bark at the wrong time. My toddler's probably going to trot across the room, hopefully with at least a diaper on at some point in time. All of these things that nobody ever prepared you for. They prepared you for the rough feedback, or they warned you against not doing the slide presentation well and gave you presentation skills training. But they didn't warn me that my teenager was going to take up all of the Wi-Fi and my Zoom meeting was going to collapse just as soon as I started it, and it was going to be a big meeting. You know what?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Resiliency, whole health and well-being, I think has come to the forefront really big in the last year. This is the talent nugget. And I've seen this change a lot in the last decade. So we used to always have performance reviews that had strengths and development needs. And where did we spend our time?
Oh, in the development needs.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? And that has become such a fun conversation over the last year. Because first of all, I don't need cookie cutter employees. Why in tarnation do I need every single person to have the same strengths across my organization? I don't need the same personalities. I don't need the same strengths. I don't need the cookie cutter team. I need diversity of thought and diversity of experience and diversity of strengths across the organization to really make it hum. So I've seen that over the last decade. There's been a shift that, okay, if there's a development need that's a derailer, we probably need to address that.
Right.
Otherwise, how do you make your strengths stronger? How do you make your strengths stronger for your team? How does that become a huge value add for you as well as your organization? I have loved seeing that shift happen. And I think it also connects back to our DEI strategies, to our employee engagement and career development, because what we're seeing is, more and more people in the workplace are flexible about what their careers look like, what they want to be like when they grow up, and they may change their mind 3 or 4 times in the process. And if we're still stuck on, well, these are your strengths and these are your development needs, and we got to work on the development needs, when that may be what makes them feel special, we're again derailing ourselves from an innovation standpoint, and we're definitely killing the energy.
Oh, for sure. And it becomes a downward cycle, right? Because the energy is what drives the innovation, and you kill the energy, you're gonna that's exactly right. I'll give you my example from that I always talk about. I'm kind of a laid back guy. So when I started in the corporate world, shortly after I left Tuscaloosa, the feedback I got in my first 6 months was basically, you don't speak up enough in meetings, and no one knows who you are, and you're not going to make it if you don't start talking more. 18 months later, I get this great rating, this great review, and all this stuff. And the first sentence on this document is, he thinks before he speaks. And so when he does say something, a whole room listens. You know what I mean? And focusing on your strengths versus your development areas and the diversity of personalities has always been very personal to me, because it could have been very easy for me to be sort of shuffled out the back door because, oh, he doesn't talk enough. No one knows who he is. He's not saying anything.
Who wants to have a meeting where everybody talks all at the same time?
I don't know who wants to have that meeting. I don't want to be at that meeting.
I don't either.
So
I can't stand it when we talk over each other on Zoom. Like, I just punch the screen when it happens. I'm like, raise your hand or something.
Exactly.
No, it's the same. Where I see it even more than performance reviews in interviewing. Internal or external, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Always look for ourselves. For things that make us feel comfortable. And where is that a problem?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
You know, like if you're a white woman interviewing a black man, then I'm expecting something when you come into the room. I'm expecting a particular persona, and you probably are expecting me to expect something and want to fill that.
Yep.
Want to fill that mold, right? Like you want to be what you think I'm looking for.
Right.
And even if you're not diverse, we always want to be what we think the interviewer is looking for, because why would we interview if we wouldn't want the job?
Exactly.
But then when they don't match up, we're like, I don't think there's a fit. What the hell is fit?
I don't know.
What is executive presence?
I don't know.
That je ne sais quoi that I can't put my finger on, but I don't think that they're right for the job.
Yep.
That's laziness, 100%. It's bias coming out, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And it's our inability or our unwillingness to have a tough conversation. I interviewed a kid, and I say kid because I feel like once you go over 40, anybody younger than me is a kid.
Yep, I know that.
When I interviewed this kid from Wake Forest, he had gone to law school for a year, dropped out, decided it wasn't for him, was now in a master's program, and I interviewed him for a position at the company, and he's apologizing for his inability to finish or unwillingness to finish law school. And it was because he had been through all these interviews thinking that he didn't get the job because he didn't finish law school. And I looked at him and I said, stop it. I mean, it totally threw him off. I said,
yeah.
I said, so you didn't waste 3 years in law school? You already knew that a year in it wasn't for you. And so you made a brave decision to quit and go find something that fit you better. Where is that wrong?
Right.
Where is that weakness? Where is that necessary for an apology? And dude started crying.
I bet. That had to be so validating.
And I was like, I love you. I think you bring everything we need to the table, but I can't have you walking in the door apologizing to everybody. So walk out of the room, go get you a cup of water, come back and let's interview again. Like this is everything you know you can do. He did. And I hired him and he's awesome. But that's what it takes sometimes, even as an interviewer, is to say, you know what? Drop the facade. Let's just talk. Don't be anybody other than who you are.
Yeah.
I don't hire the person that I interviewed who decides to come in and be somebody different. I want to hire you for who you are. And I want to be smart enough to recognize the qualities and the values that you're going to bring to the organization. And hopefully I can get that part right. You got to get your part right.
Yeah. Well said. So my follow-up question is, or it's a statement and then a question, I guess. It takes a lot of subject matter expertise and confidence and security to be able to do what you just did for that young man, because I think most people see hiring as a thing you can get very wrong, but only kind of right. You know what I mean? Like the downside of, if this person doesn't work out, Amanda, why did you hire this person? But no one's going to come bursting in and say, this was the best hire you've ever made. It's going to be, oh, this guy's a rock star. You know what I mean? Like there's just not a whole lot of upside to that. So what's your advice to folks who think the way you think, believe what you believe, but may not quite be brave and bold enough to put it into action?
So first of all, I appreciate you saying that. I don't know that it's subject matter expertise, and I don't know that much better at hiring than anybody else. But I am passionate about people, and I'm passionate about what's right. A long time ago, I stepped out on my own and I tried to do the right thing, and it had some pretty negative repercussions. But, in the overall scheme of things from a life standpoint, it was just a silly sort of college political nonsense. However, doing the right thing is never the wrong thing. And a lot of times when it comes to hiring people, I do think that hiring managers think that we enter into some sort of like lifelong blood signing like spit on your hand and shake contract. And that's not it. I mean, it is a two-way contract between the company and the employee, right? I mean, I pay you a check, you do the work. So there's a transaction going on here. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be the right transaction for both of you for forever. And I also understand that people feel that way, but, not getting the hiring right, it's just another learning. People are going to see a failure or a costly mistake, but it's not. It's another way to learn. The other thing I would say, though, is just because you hired somebody into your organization and they don't work out right on your team, it doesn't mean they're not the right person. Maybe the team's not right. Maybe the dynamic's not right. Maybe we didn't onboard them appropriately, or maybe we didn't give them the right training, or, guess what? Maybe their skills, their strengths are really better suited over here in your company than they are right here. And so we have to be willing to be innovative and devote the energy to the people in our organization to make sure that they're on the right path and have the skill set or the tools or the support they need to succeed. My kids are white. They match me. Unfortunately, they don't look too much like their Native American father, but they're very white like me. And I tell my boys all the time, you can win, but I don't want you to win because you started out 100 yards ahead of anybody else in the race. And that's where the wanting to do the right thing comes in, and giving people the opportunity that may require a little more energy or may require a little more innovation on how to make them successful. But we got to get people on the same starting line. And we have to make sure that we're all looking at the starting line as we line up together, making sure that it's fair for all of us. I don't know what party line that belongs to, and I don't care. I think it all comes down to, I want to do the right thing. And I think when enough people want to do that, that's innovation. It's energy, it's goodness, and it's humanity.
Right.
As I think it should be.
That's inspirational stuff. I think that's at the core of everything we've talked about. And, I appreciate you sharing that perspective with us. Do you have any advice, any kind of tactical advice for people who want to be innovators?
I think resiliency is key. It's one of them, honestly, especially people that are unwilling to change. They always push back. They always fight harder. And there's got to be a little bit of stubbornness, but also that self-protective resiliency. It's the put your mask on first.
Yep.
Thank you, flight attendants. It's not selfish, it's self-care. The other thing that I would say is, and honestly, I think this is the only thing that's gotten me to where I am, because I'm not the smartest person in the room. Hell, I work with a company of thousands of engineers, and they are legit rocket scientists, right? So I'm looking at one of them right now on the podcast. You are an engineer and you're extremely brilliant, but I care.
You do care.
I genuinely care about people. And I think that has gotten me a long way, is because people know that I am what I am. They know I'm genuine. They know I'm transparent. And because they know that I care, they are assuming positive intent for the most part. And that's been a way for me to drive change, to open eyes, to help people look at things differently, but also hopefully encourage them to be their own type of energetic innovator, in their own space, wherever that is. That's the kind of inspiration, that's the kind of light bulb person that I've always enjoyed being. And if I don't get to do anything else, that's what I hope I get to leave behind.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for not changing in 20 years.
Same to you, my friend.
And I appreciate the energy you brought to this conversation and your unique perspective on all of this. And congratulations on your success, and congratulations to Pratt and Whitney for making a brilliant hire, and one I'm sure they've not regretted for a second.
You're too kind.
It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your time, and I look forward to maybe having you back on to get some more of this energy.
I would love to, Jared, but I can't end a conversation without saying roll tide.
Roll tide. I wasn't going to do
tide.
it. It slipped my mind. So thank you so much. They'd come pick up my degree. I
love you, but we got to say roll tide. It's part of the contract.
It is. It's part of the contract. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this week's show. You can drop us a line on Twitter at Outlast LLC, OUTLAST LLC, or follow us on LinkedIn where we're Outlast Consulting. Until next time, keep innovating, whatever that means.